Okay, I'm going to start our event. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this warm summer day. Hopefully, everybody is staying cool and safe. I'm Dave Myers. I'm the director of the Berks Alliance, and we've been sponsoring these spotlight programs periodically for about a year now, highlighting things that we think are important developments in the community that are significant that people might be interested in. I want to introduce the chair of the Berks Alliance, John Weidenhammer, for some brief remarks. John?
Dave, thanks so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Weidenhammer, chair of the Berks Alliance. And as many of you have heard me say before, the Berks Alliance is a collaboration of anchor institutions in Berks County. We're focused on community development with a specific emphasis on improving the health, wealth, and education attainment of the citizens of Berks County. And we're really pleased today to have a presentation on from the team at FirstEnergy talking about the transition of transportation equipment from really internal combustion engines to the propulsion by electric. And it's interesting, if you look at the history of automobiles, way back in the late 1800s when we first started having automobiles, there actually was a competition between electric vehicles and internal combustion engine powered vehicles. And now it seems that we've got that competition reemerging here in the 21st century. And I'm not sure we're quite yet at a tipping point where the sale of electric vehicles is going to outpace the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles. But I do think we're relatively close to that point in the near future. So we're just delighted to have the folks at FirstEnergy make this presentation today. I think it's going to be very insightful and informative for the community. So again, thanks for being with us today. And thanks most of all to our presenters who are taking their time to both put the presentation together and to present it today. So Dave, back to you.
Thank you, John. Yes, this is a very interesting and exciting topic. We did have people from EnerSys come on and talk about what they were doing with battery-powered vehicles and battery charging stations. So this is a good add-on to that conversation, and we're looking forward to it. I do want to cover very quickly our ground rules for these sessions. We ask that you leave your cameras on, but mute your microphones. And I see there are a number of people who don't have their cameras on, but do have their microphones on. So we are going to ask you to reverse that. You'll see at the bottom of the screen a chat function, and we ask you to submit your comments and questions in the chat function. We will get to those at the end of the formal presentation, and I will either use those questions and ask them, or depending on how many people we have still participating with us, we'll open it up for the audience to ask their own questions. We will record this event. We will send everybody who registered for the event a copy of that recording. We will also post that on the Berks Alliance website, and we will share it with our friends at BCTV so they can make use of it as well. So with that, welcome everybody. And I'm going to start off by introducing Tina Largent. Tina is a business analyst for FirstEnergy, and she's joining us today from Ohio. So welcome to Pennsylvania, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're hoping to share some information with you and also answer any questions that you might have. So as I'm going through this presentation, feel free to ask questions. I know that there's going to be a chance for that at the end, but as we're going through these screens, I can't see. So if there's something that pops up, please let me know, or just shout out or raise a hand or whatever. My name is Tina Largent, and I am a business analyst in the Emerging Technologies Department. And what our department has, we have 3 arms. So we have the research arm, and we have a policy arm, and we have program teams. And I'm here with a couple of my coworkers. I do the programs side of it. So what I do is we look at whether something comes down, regulatory requirements, maybe legislation, maybe customer requests, or maybe something that we decide to do internally or see our peers doing, or whatever we think is something that will benefit our customers. We go ahead and look at some opportunities and create some strategies based on ability to execute and the value that they provide. And in the mix of that, we pull in research, and then Mike Huselton, who I'm going to introduce here in a minute, is on the policy side. So he researches the policy part of it and lets us know what we can and we can't do, or what might be difficult to do. And he also brings to us everything that's out there that has to do with policy, everything. So that's what emerging technologies looks like. And I'm going to introduce Mike Huselton right now. Mike, do you want to say a few things about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Mike Huselton. I think Tina pretty much introduced me already. So yes, I monitor the regulatory and legislative policy in FirstEnergy's footprint, really focused on electrification. So, today we're talking about transportation electrification, but that kind of goes into buildings and industrial electrification too. And then we're also joined by Alan Michael. So I'll turn it over to Alan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Alan Michael. I'm the Director of Customer Policy and Advocacy, and been working with Tina and Mike over the past few months to take our plans forward for electric vehicles. So thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to Tina.
Okay, here we go. So what we want to share with you today is we're going to talk about transportation electrification. What is it? You hear electric vehicles everywhere in the news, but we're starting to hear TE, transportation electrification, and that's more encompassing. So that's what we're calling it now. Why is it important? What are stakeholders doing to promote it? And what can I do to make a difference? So jumping right in, what is transportation electrification? So it involves transitioning personal cars, commercial fleets, school buses, transit buses, shipping and freight from internal combustion vehicles to ones powered by electricity. So don't just think your electric vehicles that you might have driving around, you and your family, whatever. Think about buses, transit buses, think of school buses. And like we have at FirstEnergy, bucket trucks, we have hybrid bucket trucks right now. So think about, big trucks, Amazon vehicles, delivery vehicles, think of forklifts. Anything that runs on internal combustion engines right now, think about converting that to electric. So customers continue to purchase EVs in record numbers, as any news outlet that you follow will tell you. And utilities are working with stakeholders to figure out how we can help that, how we can help customers transition to electric vehicles or electrifying their fleets or otherwise. So what are we trying to achieve with that? Decarbonizing and improving environments, obviously, optimizing the electric grid and modernizing infrastructure and reducing overall energy costs. FirstEnergy has their own goals when it comes to ESG, greenhouse gas reduction. And I did put a little link in there for if you want to learn more about our environmental commitment. But our first goal is 30% reduction by from a 2019 baseline by 2030, which involves exploring operational flexibilities with our West Virginia coal fleet. We continue to replace our aging SF6 transmission breakers. If you don't know what those are, those emit a gas that also depletes the ozone. It's also bad for the environment. So we're working on replacing those aging transmission breakers, targeting 100% of new purchases for light duty and aerial truck fleet to be electric or hybrid vehicles. That picture on the previous slide was actually one of our hybrid bucket trucks. Plan to electrify 30% of vehicle fleet by 2030. Now we want to become carbon neutral by 2050. And that involves thoughtfully exploring a transition away from that West Virginia coal fleet. And then continuing to replace those breakers and committing to 100% fleet electrification. And over there, it has a little star. In 2020, FirstEnergy achieved a 19% reduction. And if you'd like to learn more about that, to find out what that scope 1 is, then you could click on that link to learn more about our environmental commitment. Okay, so here's the part of the presentation where we get you involved. As a utility, we're always interested in hearing what our customers have to say. So we are going to, since it's summertime, I'm sure you've been to a picnic or maybe you plan to go to a picnic. So pretend you're at a picnic and the topic of electric vehicles comes up. So take a look at this screen at some of these questions on here and provide some answers to those questions. Can we get a little audience participation here? Like for instance, you're talking with your neighbors or wherever picnic you're at, and they start talking about electric vehicles. What do you wish you knew? And if you're a skeptic on electric vehicles, what are some of the reasons for that skepticism? So take a look at some of those questions and throw out some answers.
And we'll let people open up your microphones and make your questions now. We do have a question here about, I don't have a garage or driveway and my house is 20 feet from the street, so how can he charge his electric vehicle?
It's a great question. Something that utilities are trying to work with our customers to figure out answers to those. We have vendors who come to us with solutions. So we have a vendor that came to us that they install chargers on utility poles. So that could possibly be a solution. We have vendors who have come to us with mobile battery chargers. So, that's a solution. So we're trying to work with vendors, seeing who we could partner with, or seeing if there's some way for us to provide opportunities for those who are in either multi-unit dwellings, apartment complexes, or off the street parking.
We have somebody who raised the question here about the cost of electric vehicles being so high. Can you talk a little bit about that, Tina?
Well, hopefully, as more vehicles come into the market, that cost is going to come down. I'm sure a couple of years ago, you watched the Super Bowl and there were maybe 1 or 2 ads for electric vehicles. In this past year, they were almost all electric vehicle commercials. So, and our OEMs are committing to transitioning all of their manufacturing to electric vehicles. So as more come onto the market, you're going to see that price come down. And also the cost of the batteries themselves has always been so high. But over the years, that has started to come down as well. And they're trying to find solutions for reducing the cost of manufacturing those batteries. So hopefully in the future, and also used electric vehicles. So as we transition to electric vehicles and then more used electric vehicles come into the market, that's also a way that you could purchase an electric vehicle at a lower cost.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, Tina, too, that the total cost of ownership, like the initial investment is often higher, but the total cost of ownership and operating expenses and maintenance expenses are lower. So if you look at the big picture, these things are already, in a lot of cases, cost effective, depending on how you use the vehicle.
Yep. And thanks, Mike. We'll look at that some more on the other slides too. Thanks.
Yeah, and just two other things. Absolutely, Mike is right. And we've recently taken a look at six different comparable models of vehicles, the electric vehicle in comparison to a gas vehicle equivalent. And we have found that over the lifetime of the vehicle, you will save money when you consider that total cost of ownership. And there was a follow-up on that same question around limited travel distance between charges. One of the big mindset changes of driving an EV is that we're used to driving internal combustion engines where we fill the gas tank to full and we run it to empty. We fill it to full, we run it to empty. But with access to charging where you call home, you charge on a daily basis. There is really, the typical drive is less than 40 miles round trip a day. You've got plenty of battery capacity, even at your lowest capacity levels, to do that daily commute. And then I'll let Mike speak to what's happening with the national infrastructure for highways. Mike, if you want to just address that real quick.
Well, we have that coming up in a later slide, but just know that the Infrastructure and Jobs Act has put a lot of money towards corridor charging. So we'll get into that a little bit.
We've got a couple of questions here that you guys might want to answer. People talking about taking a long time to get their car charged. They go to a charging station, they take a book along to read it. They're doing a long trip. They're having to plan an extra hour waiting for the charging to occur. How long does it take? Is that a real challenge? And is there a way to speed this process up?
Alan is an EV driver, so we'll let Alan answer that question.
So yeah, let me address that. I just took a trip this past weekend in our EV, And one evening I had some time and I stopped to charge at a level 2 charger, which was free of charge. I get about 30 miles of range for every hour. I walked to a nearby restaurant, had dinner, and when I was done, I got about 40 miles of charge from that charging session. Now, I was traveling between baseball tournaments on a daily basis. These fields could be anywhere from an hour away. So on Friday night, I stopped for a charge that gave me about 200 miles of range. It took 15 minutes, and that was at what we call a DC fast charger. And then on my way home the other day, I stopped at another DC fast charger to get about the same range for about 15 minutes of charge. So you do need to plan a little bit for those trips like that, but the key to this for travelers is that if you're spending the night in a hotel, it's very advantageous that your hotel offers a level 2 charger that you can charge overnight just like you charge at home.
And we got one more question here, and then we'll let you keep moving through the slides here, Tina. If I have a gas car, is there any way I can convert it to electricity?
Not that I know of. Mike, Alan?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that either.
If you
I mean,
figure it
there's
out,
been
let
a
us
lot
know.
of different models
Okay,
and
so
a
we
lot
got-
of different things put out there, like battery replacements and things like that. The conversion, it's probably going to be cheaper just to buy the new vehicle.
If you don't mind, I do want to address one question in the chat here. It talks about how long does it take to charge a vehicle. Someone at a Wawa, carries a book because it takes 40 minutes to charge. So, one of the key things for an EV owner to learn about is that on a DC fast charger, that's only meant to charge the battery quickly between somewhere around 20% of your battery capacity to 80%. If you try to charge with a DC fast charger over that 80% threshold, it really slows down the charging cycle. It was best explained to me one time that if you have a pitcher of water and you're pouring into a glass, as that glass gets full, don't you slow the pour from the pitcher? It's the same is true with the physics behind charging this battery. So when I first plug in my vehicle with a DC fast charger, it's charging at the rate of like 600 miles equivalent per hour. But as it gets to that 80%, it starts to slow down. So a lot of the experiences that you hear about 40 minutes of charging, I'm assuming that's a DC fast charger, that may have to do with the dynamics of an education of understanding how to best use the technology. So I did want to address that before we moved on. Thanks for that question.
Thanks,
Tina, we're
Alan.
going to let you move on. We do have a couple
Okay.
other questions, but I'm going to store them here.
Okay, yes, I was just going to say, as we go through this presentation, think about these questions and think about any questions that you have, and we will circle back with this at the end. So vehicle definitions, and you may have heard some of these things and maybe don't know what each one of them means, so we'll go through these quickly. A hybrid is a combustion and electric motor. It's a car that has both, but the electric motor is charged as the car brakes and is used to assist with fuel economy. The plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or the PEV or the PHEV, that has two motors as well, but the primary motor is electric. Electric can be charged by plugging in, and then the combustion engine will kick in when the electric charge is low. And then you have your battery electric vehicle or your BEV. They have no combustion engine and are plugged in to charge. And I thought this illustration below here, it helps because you always hear in front of the meter, behind the meter, which one is, which goes where, or what are we looking at? What are we talking about? So I pulled this image from PSEAG's website, actually. And if you see there in the image, so utility assets, think power lines, transformers, and even going back to like generation, where the electricity is generated, where it's transmitted, distributed. That is that's
Who can take you now?
I'm sorry.
Well, just go down on your own.
Oh, somebody's not on mute. Okay. So if you see there from the illustration, you can see that utility assets, and those are sometimes considered pole-to-meter infrastructure. And then you have customer assets, which the electric panel, switchgear, that's behind the meter infrastructure. And then you can see there the utility investment, or what we call the make-ready infrastructure, are the utility assets, and the customer assets, that's make-ready infrastructure. And then the customer's investment is your charger, your electric vehicle, or your EVSE, your EV electric vehicle supply equipment. So what I like to think of it as, you're sitting there on your couch in your living room in your house, and everything that comes from the meter inside that's what they call behind the meter. And then everything from the, you're sitting in your house, think the meter out, the utility assets, that's in front of the meter. So I hope that's helpful whenever you hear when talk about behind the meter and in front of the meter. So electric versus gas. We were talking about costs earlier, and people have it in their minds that electric vehicles are more expensive. Well, the price sticker, when you look at it, I mean, that obviously they look more expensive, but if you look at all the maintenance costs and operating costs, the convenience, health, and welfare, you are looking at electric cheaper overall, because you have no oil changes with electric vehicles. There's no filter changes, no belts or hoses to wear out. There's less wear and tear on the brake pads due to regenerative braking. And if you don't know what that is, it's every time you brake, it sends a charge back into the battery. Operating costs, fuel costs, obviously for EVs are lower overall, as we all see the prices at the pumps right now. Convenience, the majority of charging is done at home, as Alan was stating earlier. Range is lower with electric vehicles, but within average time of daily commutes, which is typically around 40 to 50 miles a day. Health and wellness, of course, EVs are cleaner and quieter to operate, and it reduces pollution over time. So when you look at EVSE, or electric vehicle supply equipment, we have level 1, level 2, and DC fast chargers are sometimes referred to as level 3. So level 1, you have a 120 volt portable charger that can plug into any standard outlet. If you buy an electric vehicle, you're going to get a cord that's going to plug into whatever regular outlet that you have. It's going to take a long time to charge. So a lot of people don't opt for that, and they want to opt for something like a level 2, which is a 240 volts requiring a special outlet. So think of an electric dryer kind of outlet. It provides around 12 to 70 miles of charge per hour, depending on what kind of vehicle you have and what kind of charger type you have. It can be purchased separately and installed in your home, and also can be installed publicly, destination workplace. I'm sure you've seen maybe some at like a Walmart or something like that. A lot of places like that have level 2 chargers. But then we have our DC fast chargers, which is 50 kilowatt to 500 kilowatt, converts 3-phase power to direct current. It's much more expensive than a level 2. Generally publicly available, and can charge 80% of the battery in 20 to 30 minutes, as Alan was stating earlier as well. So those are the different kind of chargers that you can have. So barriers to adoption. Why don't we see everybody running out and buying electric vehicles right now? So there's range anxiety, obviously. They have lower range than combustion vehicles, which means more planning for longer trips, obviously. Availability of maintained DC fast chargers. So when I say maintain, there are a lot of DC fast chargers out there, but a lot of times, as a matter of fact, we just went to a conference that said between 30 and 50% of the time those chargers are not working. There's something wrong with them. They're offline, or they're broken or whatever. So it's difficult to keep those maintained, but that is growing quickly, and we're working on that. This is something that's definitely a learn as you go process. FirstEnergy is part of the National Electric Highway Coalition, which is a joint effort among major utilities to make sure that there are DC fast chargers among the major travel corridors. Infrastructure, just like we were talking about earlier, somebody said, I put my car on the street, how am I supposed to charge my vehicle? We're learning right now that the city of Akron, they have a program that they're trying to put into place. They have a task force looking into that. They want to make sure that level 2 charging stations or some type of charging stations are within a 10-minute walking distance of everybody, so that everybody has access to those chargers, because not everybody has a house where they can install a charging station. Multi-unit dwellings like apartment complexes, condos, whatever. And then you also want to look at equity is very important. Just like I was just talking about the city of Akron, talking about low-income areas that may want to contribute to a cleaner environment, but may not have access like those who own homes do. Vehicle availability, dealerships, like we were talking about earlier, dealers are offering more EV models, but if you go to any kind of dealership right now, I mean, maybe they have one, maybe they have two. People who want electric vehicles are ordering the kinds that they want and are taking anywhere between 6, 9, 10 months to get their electric vehicles, their dream electric vehicles. So it's coming, but supply chain issues and many other barriers are stalling the efforts. Higher upfront costs, of course, like I said, that sticker shock of, oh, that electric vehicle is way more expensive than this vehicle, but overall the total cost of ownership ends up being much lower. And consumer awareness. I mean, there are people out there that really just don't have access to knowing the benefits of an electric vehicle, or consumers are unwilling to adopt. Just ask my dad and his uncles as they sit around the table and talk about their classic cars, and we're never going to have an electric vehicle. So consumer awareness and consumer education, really important to try to teach everybody, show everybody what's out there and what's available to them. So I'm going to pass it off to Mike Uselton now to go over forecasting.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. Yeah, you know, one of the things that's happening to address these barriers to adoption is there's kind of a full court press going on right now. You see the auto manufacturers, the utilities, the charging companies, and of course the government incentives and things like that. They're really trying to address this. These forecasts that you see on the screen right here, these are Edison Electric Institute forecasts, and you kind of see a steady increase in the number of EVs on the road, as well as the percentage of the total light duty vehicle sales. Auto manufacturers have seen those trends as well. As Tina mentioned, in the orders that they're getting, the market is there and it's coming quickly. And you kind of see this ramp up where things have been flat for many decades.
Yeah,
Okay. Those trends that we're seeing there from EEI, those are trends from one company, but they kind of align with the trends that we're seeing, projections from pretty much everyone else in the industry too. In the lower left-hand corner, you see that kind of the charging ports that are going to be necessary to be able to support that number of electric vehicles. Those things are kind of picking up as well. And you can kind of see that the overwhelming majority of charging for light duty vehicles are going to be done at home. We get a lot of focus on the public DC fast charging, and that's important for visibility and to give comfort to drivers on long trips. But really, it's only going to account for about 1% of the actual charging ports that are out there. And of course, moving forward, we mentioned customer awareness. We are trying this presentation that we're giving you today is to try to increase your awareness. Utilities are doing this, auto manufacturers, media. There's a lot of efforts out there to bring awareness to the lower cost and the environmental benefits. The affordability, the types of EVs that are coming in. There's a lot of things that are happening, and of course, the availability of charging stations. Tina, you want to go to the next slide? So this is something else. So, so far we've been talking about light duty, but medium and heavy duty vehicles are also electrifying. This is a survey that we got from a company called Energy Impact Partners. They did a survey and found that there's only 12% of the vehicle fleets had no plans to electrify. So that's 88% are either electrifying or are, they have plans to do so in the future. And really, the main drivers there are the sustainability goals and the lower cost of ownership in those vehicles. I would say that the key here for anybody, any fleets looking to electrify, is to contact your utility earlier, because we can provide guidance on infrastructure costs and timelines. Some of those things tend to surprise people sometimes as we do load studies and figure out some of these loads for fleets can be quite large, and they can take some time to actually get the equipment in the ground. The vehicles, with supply chain issues and things like that, you can kind of get the vehicles pretty quickly, but the infrastructure could take a while. So we ask that anybody looking to electrify, as you start looking into it, you contact the utility at the same time you're looking at the vehicles, so that you can kind of bring those two together. It looks like Alan wants to add a comment. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, actually, thanks, Mike. I just wanted to add too, especially for fleets, given our mindset as a society of the internal combustion engine and the speed with which we can fill up a tank with gasoline, it's hard to change those mindsets that's big, that bigger or faster is better. But especially for a fleet, get with us early so that we can help design a charging system around your needs, what your daily driving needs are, how long your vehicles are sitting, how much of the battery capacity actually has to be charged before you can do your next route. This can save you a tremendous amount of money in investment of charging equipment. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Can I jump in real quick here, Mike? We do have somebody who's a little bit involved in fleet management in the program with us. Okay, if I call on him quickly to see what they're talking about, what they're thinking about,
Sure.
Mike Duff? You okay with talking?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I have too much to say.
Mike is with Penske.
Yeah, we're certainly looking at this. We're running a whole fleet of electric vehicles in California in sort of a partnership with, excuse me, with Freightliner, so we can get some, diagnostic information on performance and whatnot. But I think that the challenges are a lot of the things that we've heard, which is the length of time it does take to charge a vehicle for over the road applications. In other words, if you're a long haul, if you're running a long haul route, you got to figure out where along the way can you stop and charge. And with hours of service and whatnot, it's not really feasible to have a driver sitting there for a long time while vehicles charging. But for shorter applications, it certainly is very feasible. And I think that not to jump ahead of where we're this presentation, but certainly the infrastructure is not where it needs to be, but it's getting there. Let's put it that way. I know there's a lot of effort, and the industry is definitely looking at this because it's coming, and it's the right thing to do for the environment and whatnot. But we, again, we're in the process, like I think a lot of folks, of trying to figure out exactly how this will work and how we can make it work, and we're partnering with different organizations to try to do that.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Mike. Mike, back to you.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments too. One of the things that we got to keep in mind here is that it's not all going to happen at once. And long haul trucking, that's going to be one of those ones that's going to be a little further down the line. Light duty is kind of works for most people, unless you have to park on the street, and then maybe it's not right for you just yet until you start getting the infrastructure built out and things like that. So it's not going to happen for everybody all at once, but it will happen. And one thing that I do want to mention is we talked about the infrastructure and getting a hold of your utility early for infrastructure. There's also public infrastructure that's coming, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But another reason to get a hold of the utility early is for your operational cost, right? Because if you are now getting your fuel over the electric lines, we can kind of work with you on the rates to figure out which rate is best for your individual operation. These vehicles, especially on the fleet side, it's not usually a one-for-one replacement. You know, you kind of have to look at how you use the vehicles and then figure out how you're going to use the new vehicles, and you may have to adjust a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe you have circumstances where it works for you right now. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mike. And yes, thanks for the comments. You know, for over the road, I was recently at a EPRI conference where there was a whole day dedicated to fleet. And for the over the road applications, you know, it's going to come down to innovation. And, you know, some of the questions became, you know, maybe an innovation in the future would be battery swapping. You know, could this be modular enough that the batteries could be swapped to speed up that that refueling time? Another option came up is what if the batteries were in the trailer and you swapped trailers, you know, at your different points. So anyway, just I think innovation will come over time, as Mike is saying. It's not going to happen overnight, but solutions will come to bear. Thanks.
Tina, go ahead to the next slide. So ultimately, what we're seeing here, we see transportation as kind of being beneficial to the environment, beneficial to the grid if we manage it correctly, right? So, you know, there are certain times of day where the grid has excess capacity. So if we can take some of that new load and put it into those places, it can actually be beneficial to the grid. And really in the total energy picture, it can cost less for customers. So the idea is to find that sweet spot in those circumstances where we can get everything right in the middle. Tina, you can go to the next slide. So this is FirstEnergy. This is kind of our vision statement. So, you know, our vision is to be a seamless and reliable economy-wide electrification effort. We want it to be sustainable, reliable, and efficient. So our goal at FirstEnergy is to be the trusted partner of all of our customers to help them use their energy in the widest energy picture more efficiently, really to help save our customers money. Tina, go to the next slide. I kind of alluded to this earlier. So one of the big efforts that's happening right now is this NEVI program. This is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program. This came about as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed last year. That act, Pennsylvania will have access to $171.5 million for EV charging infrastructure. Those funds are going to flow through PennDOT, and the first phase of this, they're going to be used to build out a DC fast charging network along designated corridors. Pennsylvania has already designated certain corridors throughout the state. Those the federal criteria that there should be a minimum of one public site containing 4 150 kW fast chargers within a mile of the corridor and no more than 50 miles apart. So if you think about that, and you know, every 50 miles along a travel corridor, and really the only time that most drivers, I say most because it's not always the case, but most drivers will only use a DC fast charger whenever they're outside of the vehicle's range and they're going on long trips. So if you get one of these sites every 50 miles and there's 4 ports there, this really covers pretty much for a long time the amount of fast charging that we're going to need. There will be other circumstances off corridor where you'll want to get these charges as well, but this is a big start. So The state is currently working on a plan. They have to get it back to the Federal Highway Administration by August 1st. FirstEnergy, as well as the other utilities in the state, have been very active in talking with PennDOT, as well as other agencies to try to help them with those plans. Those plans have to be approved by the Federal Highway Administration by September 30th. And then once that happens, we'll start seeing some grant money flow out, and or at least grant applications come in. The money might not start flowing until fourth quarter, maybe into first quarter of next year. And down here, here's a link. If you click on that link, that'll give you it's the Alternative Fuels Data Center, and they keep a nice updated track of all of the laws in Pennsylvania and all of the incentives. There's also some other cool tools that you can look at there on that site. So I think we're kind of wrapping up here. So really what you want to do is you want to consider if transportation is right for you. We've looked at a lot of different use cases. Some use cases it's going to take longer than others. Some use cases it makes sense for a lot of people right now. But you want to determine what your best charging methods are, figure out how you use your vehicle, figure out how you're going to charge your vehicle, get some education, contact your utility earlier to help with any kind of electrification planning. You want to be able to research and utilize any incentives that are out there. We do ask as much as you can to share your data with the utilities, because we can figure out not only where that new load is coming on. One thing that I didn't mention earlier, whenever we were talking about the charging ports, for fleet ports and for public ports and level 2 charging, we're going to know, because those customers have to come to us and tell us where those things are. One of the things that we have to kind of consider as a utility is home charging, because that's going to be the bulk of charging. So and currently you can put a home charger in without notifying your utility. So we ask that you kind of notify us so that at least we know that you're out there. That way, if we start seeing any clustering of vehicle homes and things like that, and we can see increased loads in locations, we can adapt. And then finally, engage in conversations with the policymakers, because all of the state agencies, not all of the state agencies, but most of the state agencies have some kind of electrification program or something that they're looking at there. So there's a lot of conversations happening right now. So those are kind of the things that you can do. And Dave, I'll turn it back over to you and we can dive into question and answers.
Great. Well, we did have a really quick question at the end right here about who exactly at the utilities should you notify? Is it?
So right now it kind of depends on the it kind of depends on the situation. We are kind of revamping our processes to get that information. So if you're going to be putting in a fleet charger or something like that where you need the upgrade, that will come through our design folks. If not, if you're just a residential charger, right now you can call the call center, they can note the account and put it on there. We don't really have a way to track that right now, but if we could put a comment on the account, then whenever we do get to the point of tracking it, we can pull that data and we can pull it in.
Okay, so it depends on who and what. Okay,
Yep.
Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, and for most customers, even that design process, it starts with calling our call center.
Okay. I want to call on somebody else, Bethany Ayers-Fisher, who works with the city, is working on their sustainability plan. Bethany, can you talk about what's the city doing in this area and what challenges are you facing in the city to try to address the increase of electric vehicles?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So one of the things we're looking at, we know that home charging for Reading and quite frankly, a lot of the boroughs and Berks is not an option. We have only on-street parking. And if we would allow that, basically we would have a spaghetti network of cords going across sidewalks. And we're trying to work to avoid that. So we're actually looking to identify spaces where people will be spending an hour or so at on a regular basis. So our recreational areas, we have about 30 parks and playgrounds within the city limits, not all of whom have parking, but where we can sneak in a parking space or two with a charger, we're looking at that. We're looking at larger facilities that could have more charging stations. I'm not sure, I think it was Alan who was mentioning that he was going around for a baseball tournament. And like, you know, like we're hoping that within 5 years, if you're at a basketball tournament or baseball tournament in the city, you'll just be able to plug in while you're at your kid's game. And so that's one of the things we're looking at. We're also looking at electrifying our fleet, but that will be a separate charging situation. And we're also looking at it as a small, but hopefully steady income for the city as a different source of revenue that would be very reasonably priced. Certainly will be less than the $75 that it's costing to fill up a reasonably energy or fuel efficient vehicle right now. You know, it'll probably cost you $6, you know, less than $10. You'll be able to afford coffee again at one of our many wonderful coffee shops in the city. So these are kind of where, you know, we're looking at it, and we know that we're not the only city in this situation. A lot of the cities on the Northeast, we were all built before our cars were invented. So we have some different challenges, but you know, we need to figure out how we're going to do it and what's going to work for us, and design that way. So thank you, Dave, for letting me speak on that.
Yeah, thank you. You raised a good point, and wonder, Mike or Alan or Tina, what's it cost to charge an electric car? I mean, pointing out it's costing $5, slightly less now than that per gallon for gas.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Let me get back to that, but let me just first, Bethany, those are great ideas that you've got working on there. And, you know, the city of Akron, Ohio, as well as Pittsburgh and Minneapolis, they all have some pretty interesting plans that, you know, might be helpful to you to take a look at. You know, when you talk about, you know, having the ability to have a level 2 charger available to you when you're parked for an hour or two, maybe at a basketball game or at a park or what have you. You know, in my experience, with a average drive of about 40 miles round trip a day, it's my wife's round trip that I'm talking about. We charge for about an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. So that replenishes that daily drive. And I was just looking at the app this morning, and so last night's charge for yesterday's 40-mile round trip was $2. So that's how I kind of think of it, is that that round trip yesterday cost $2. So
Okay, good. It's
you
still
know,
less than the $5 a gallon, 20 miles to the gallon in a car. So yeah.
yeah.
Let me, we had a couple questions about other forms of transportation and how this fits in. So what's this mean for school buses? Is there anything special that we should be thinking about that? Is it likely that we're going to see school buses transferred to electric vehicles?
Yes, absolutely. And as part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, there's significant monies apportioned to public transportation and school bus. And so we do have an initiative underway to work with communities around taking advantage of those programs.
And so schools are interested, they should do some of that same sort of reaching out. I'm guessing either contract or they own the school buses, they would want to work with the utility to figure out what, where, when, and how.
Yeah, if there's a school district that wants to get in touch with us, Dave, if they can shoot that your way and get it to me, we'll personally handle that. Thank you.
Okay. And you mentioned public transportation, so that intercity buses, intercity buses, all those are moving in this direction. Are you seeing a lot of movement in that right now?
It's starting to heat up. And again, when you look at the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, there is even more significant dollars in that public transportation, school transportation, in terms of dollars allocated to incentivizing the adoption of these transportation electrification.
What about
Significant.
passenger trains? Anything happening with that?
Mike, are you familiar with anything on passenger trains in terms of the IIJA?
We're excited about this because trains are going to be coming back to Reading in the next couple of years.
Yeah, so it's pretty comprehensive for transportation. I'm not sure if there's anything specific in there. It was a big bill. I think it was like 6,000 pages. So I would not be surprised if there was something in there.
Something buried there. Yeah. Yeah.
Dave,
Let me
we'll
ask-
follow up. Dave, we'll follow up with you on that question, okay?
Okay, good. If the demand for electric vehicles goes up, that's going to increase demand for the supply of electricity. What does that impact does that have on where you guys, how you generate your electricity? What's it mean for you? What's it mean for the environment? Do you have the capacity to do that?
Yeah, so we, with the way the markets are structured in Pennsylvania now, we don't own generation. That is coordinated through PJM, and they have forecasts that they are looking at. They're also looking at this transportation electrification as well, to ensure there's plenty of generation to support the electrification needs. As far as the wires part of the business, which is what MedEd in our case there in the Reading area, we're responsible for. Again, it comes down to advanced planning. If you think about, I don't know about many of you, but I know when I went to college, that's when my parents got central air conditioning. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, what happened to the last 18 years of my life where we suffered with heat, right? That came over time, and we adapted it as an industry, not just FirstEnergy, but all of our peers. And the same will be true of electric vehicles, and that's why advanced planning is important. The Department of Energy did a study of Pennsylvania, and they really didn't see any major concerns with the wire side of the business until you get to about 25% adoption, and we're not there yet. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just wanted to speak after you. But yeah, one of the things that you want to think about too is that I think I kind of mentioned it earlier. The question is, will this increase electric rates? Well, if we can send and shift a lot of this transportation charging to happen at off-peak times, then we can leverage our existing wires to deliver more electric over a greater period of time. That can actually have downward pressure on electric distribution rates. So something to think about there too is, if we manage this correctly, it can be beneficial to the grid and it can actually lower rates.
So we could more off-peak hours rather than high points during the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody else have a question that we haven't gotten to that you want to raise? Please raise your hand or open your mic and ask away. Got time for maybe one or two more, and then I have one final question.
Yeah, there's a question there in the chat about, will overall electric rates increase based on significantly more demand, just like gasoline? And part of my role as Director of Customer Policy and Advocacy is to ensure affordability. And so FirstEnergy's focus when it comes to electrification, be it transportation or heating or other technologies, our focus is to ensure that in the long run, your energy wallet which is made up of gasoline, fuel oil, natural gas, electricity, and other fuels, that fuel wallet should not grow. It should be as big, or maybe hopefully even smaller than it is today in comparison. So that's what we're focused on, is lowering your total energy wallet. Mike, you had another.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, as we're talking about demand for more fuel, just like gasoline, there are circumstances where electrification may not be the right solution. But if other people electrify, they're kind of reducing their demand for gasoline. So, in theory, that can also have a downward pressure on gasoline rates or gasoline prices by lowering the demand for fuel. Plus, you also get the environmental benefits of, cleaner, no tailpipe emissions. So something to think about there is that even if it's not right for you, may not be something to really oppose, because it could you can get benefits even if you don't electrify yourself.
Yeah, so society may benefit. We did have somebody who submitted a comment that there are conversion kits to transform your gas-powered car. It just takes a lot of work and energy to do that. I mean, physical energy of changing the car. So we'll share that with people as well. So one last question, and I'll ask this of all three of you. Where's the world going to be in 5 years? Where do you see the world being in 5 years relative to electric vehicles?
Who wants to start that one?
Go ahead, Tina.
I look at 5 years ago. I like to compare electric vehicles to my phone. So if I look at look at cell phones, how far they've come in 5 years and where they are now. And I always think of, like, I don't want to leave. Nobody wants to leave their house, even if their phone is fully charged. They want to know that there's something out there. If something happens, that they'll be able to charge their phone, even though the majority of your charging is done at home. I want to know that if I'm out there and I get stuck out there, that I'm going to be able to charge my phone somewhere. And people want that reassurance. And I think in 5 years from now, we're going to have that. And we're not going to be having these conversations where people are like, oh, it's never going to happen. It's going to be here. Everyone's going to, it's going to be more acceptable. And I think there are going to be a lot of cooler vehicles out there than there are now, because there are already some on the way. So I see it coming, and looking forward to it myself, and seeing it as something that's more ubiquitous. It's a big word. Mike?
Alan?
Yeah, I'll just say, I'm on the policy side, so I tend to look at things in political terms. I think the momentum is strongly towards electrification of transportation. I would like to see us in I'm going to say where I'd like to see us go in 5 years instead of where I think it's going to go. But I would like to see us go to where both methods of transportation can kind of coexist for a reasonable period of time, so that people start getting more and more comfortable with electrification, and don't kind of feel like, oh, this is a big shift and change that's happening. Then a lot of people are kind of opposed to that kind of change. So that's kind of where I'd like to see it in 5 years. Alan?
Yeah,
Alan, we'll
thanks.
close with you.
Yeah, and I think in 5 years, we're going to get to a point where everyone understands the dynamics between their internal combustion vehicle and their electric vehicle. And right now, there's a steep learning curve to that. But once people better understand that, then they will make more informed choices about replacing other vehicles. And it really comes down to getting an experience. So I encourage any of you, as you're renting a car or taking an Uber, try to get an electric option and try it out. It's the best way to learn.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you. Terrific job. Very, very interesting. I also want to thank David Turner, who hasn't shown his face, but is on the call for helping us arrange this. I'm going to remind everybody that we will be sending you a copy of the video so you can relive this as much as you want. We'll be posting on the Berks Alliance website, and we'll be sending it to BCTV. And we'll be sharing the comments and questions that came through to everybody. So thank you once again on behalf of the Berks Alliance. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, presenters. Thanks, everybody. Have a super day.
Take care.
Thank you.